The views expressed in this blog are hosted on my own website, are strictly personal, and do not reflect the views of any organization. Hello and welcome my friends to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. Now this week a young colleague of mine comes in the newsroom and asks me a direct question. Where were you, Rajdeep sir, in 1990? Her obvious reference was to the killings and exodus of Kashmiri Pandits that took place that year, and the perception she had, or the impression I got, was that she felt that the national media at the time, she was told, had not covered the Kashmiri Pandit issue. Now, I often call this post-1990 generation the Instagram, WhatsApp generation that lives in the here and now, has little time for historical facts and accuracy. But even so, I felt my colleague had raised a valid question, and it got me jogging my mind. The fact and the truth, my friends, in 1990, I was the youngest assistant editor at the Times of India at the time, less than 2 years into the profession in Times of India, Mumbai. My beat was covering Mumbai and Maharashtra politics. Kashmir was far away in a sense from my journalistic responsibilities. The Times of India had a clear geographical hierarchy. If you were working out of the Times of India Delhi office, you covered North India. If you were working out of Mumbai, you covered Western India. The closest I got to covering a big national story in 1990 was L.K. Advani's Rath Yatra as it was wending its way through Gujarat from Somnath towards Ayodhya. And I'll have more on that in a moment. Let me tell you though that the Times of India did cover the Kashmiri Pandit exodus and killings extensively. There were lots of reports, editorials written on it. There was criticism of the VP Singh government's handling of the crisis. But it was the pre-24/7 news TV era, and therefore that visual image of the terror and the violence and the exodus was perhaps missing. And it's perhaps that visual image that creates the lasting impact. But to suggest that the media didn't cover the Kashmiri Pandit exodus and killings is a blatant lie, my friends. Let me though, while also ask the question, where were the other key stakeholders in 1990? Let's start with the BJP, which is making the maximum noise at the moment over the Kashmir Files controversy and the handling of the Kashmiri Pandits issue. In 1990, the BJP was supporting the VP Singh-led coalition, Janata Dal coalition government at the center. The BJP at no stage chose to withdraw support over the handling or mishandling of the Kashmir issue, over the Kashmir Pandits exodus. Instead, it is in September 1990 that the BJP withdraws support to VP Singh when L.K. Advani is arrested during the Rath Yatra, because the fact is that for the BJP in 1990, Ayodhya and not Kashmir was the central issue. The fact is, for the BJP, they saw the Rath Yatra as their vehicle to power at the time. And in the 1991 elections, my friend, they made Hindutva the core plank, but with the Ram Janmabhoomi issue as the central image and messaging, not the plight of the Kashmiri Pandits. Jagmohan was appointed as the governor of Kashmir in January 1990. He later became a minister in the Vajpayee government. But the main core messaging of the BJP centered around Ayodhya and Ram Janmabhoomi. Where was Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the time, who today is urging people to go and watch the film and speaks about truth telling? Well, Mr. Modi was in Gujarat, and he was organizing L.K. Advani's Rath Yatra in Gujarat. And he too, like other top BJP leaders, was not rushing to Kashmir, because he too realized that getting the Rath Yatra right was central to the BJP's ambitions of becoming a major national player. So Mr. Modi too was parked primarily in Gujarat in 1990 at the time. Let's just get this right. The BJP wanted political power. Jammu and Kashmir has 6 Lok Sabha seats. The Kashmiri Pandits in that sense are a minuscule vote bank. On the other hand, winning the Hindi heartland was key because Uttar Pradesh has 85 seats. That's why the Ram Janmabhoomi temple issue was far more important than the plight of the Kashmiri Pandits. Where were the other key players? Dr. Farooq Abdullah was Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir at the time, resigned on January 19, 1990. And the fact is that he too was seen to have escaped to the safer climes of London, even as jihadi terror was rising in the valley. I asked Dr. Abdullah this question, why did you resign? He said, because I resigned in protest of Jagmohan being made the governor of Jammu and Kashmir. But the truth is, Dr. Abdullah was missing in action in the Kashmir Valley at a critical time and therefore cannot escape responsibility as well. What of other players? Mufti Muhammad Saeed, the late Mufti Muhammad Saeed, was also at that time the Home Minister, the Union Home Minister was from Kashmir, Mufti Muhammad Saeed. And he too comes with little credit, because remember, it was Mufti Muhammad Saeed's daughter Rubaiya Saeed who was kidnapped by JKLF terrorists in December of 1989, and then there's a negotiated release that eventually results in militants or terrorists being swapped for his daughter's release. And guess what? The Union Minister who goes to Kashmir to ensure the negotiation is now the Kerala Governor, Arif Muhammad Khan, along with I.K. Gujral. They went to negotiate this. Arif Muhammad Khan is today a poster boy for the BJP. But would the BJP ask Arif Muhammad Khan about his role in Rubaiya Saeed's release? Remember, all local police officials that I have met say they were opposed to this release. Dr. Abdullah went to the extent of saying this was the final nail in the coffin, that he too opposed this terrorism for Rubaiya swap that was done. But the deed was done. Who should answer the questions there? Then the leader of the opposition in 1990 was Rajiv Gandhi. Now the Congress claims that it was Rajiv who led a gherao of parliament on the Kashmiri Pandits issue, brought it into the national limelight. I haven't seen visuals of the gherao, but I asked old timers in parliament and they say yes, the Congress and Rajiv did raise the Kashmiri Pandits issue in parliament and question the VP Singh government's handling of the Kashmir issue. But Rajiv Gandhi will also have much to answer for 1987. For the alleged rigging of that election in Jammu and Kashmir that many believe gave a fresh impetus to secessionism at the time. But the fact is, at least in 1990, it seems Rajiv Gandhi was on the right side of history, even though he was in the opposition. What then of the other key players today? The Kashmir Files film director Vivek Agnihotri and the star actor Anupam Kher. From what I have seen in Wikipedia, Vivek Agnihotri was a advertising filmmaker, creative director, making films like for Gillette and Coca-Cola, but there is no mention that he was agitating or raising the Kashmir Pandits issue at the time. Anupam Kher was winning Filmfare Awards, had just won a Filmfare Award Best Comedian for Ram Lakhan in 1989, was making his way up in Bollywood. Kashmir's frozen turbulence and blood-soaked violence was far away at the time from his career also. Truth be told, my friends, the Kashmir Pandit issue was taken up in 1990, but it didn't become the center of a national debate over a prolonged period of time because other issues took over. By 1992, the Babri Masjid had been demolished. Post-Ayodhya riots broke out, especially in my home city of Mumbai. The Hindu-Muslim divide widened further. Terrorism got even more entrenched in the Kashmir Valley. Pakistan kept sending terrorists into the valley. Many lives were lost, most of them of Indian Muslims at the time. Something we must not forget. Kashmiri Pandits became refugees in Jammu and other areas, were living in inhospitable conditions. I traveled to Jammu in 1995 to do a story on their plight for NDTV. You could argue that I should have done much more. But the truth, my friends, again is in 1995, there was no 24/7 news TV. We used to do half-an-hour shows. I'm not holding that up as an excuse or a defense. But maybe I could argue that at least I went and covered the story. What of our politicians and netas? How many of them have been to the refugee camps, shown a genuine empathy for the victims of what happened in 1990? I asked another colleague who actually lived in Jammu and lived through those refugee camps, and he told me I.K. Gujral came in 1997 as Prime Minister, President Abdul Kalam came in 2003, And Prime Minister Manmohan Singh came along with Mufti Muhammad Saeed to visit them in the camps in 2004. The truth is, a lot of promises were made, but the fact is that, as my friend tells me, the Kashmiri Pandits wanted justice through fast-track courts, which they have not got. They want to be declared internally displaced people and not migrants, again, which has not happened. The truth, my friends, is that it is easy to promote a film because it may fit in with a political agenda. It is much more difficult to deliver justice on the ground and ensure genuine empathy for those who have lost it all. Think about that. That was the Straight Bat. Do, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe. Jai Hind, Namaskar.